welcome back to my channel. If you're watching this video, chances are that you're engaged, and if that is the case, congratulations. Or you are planning a celebration of some sort, and if that's the case, what an exciting time. Now, we all know how exciting it can be planning a wedding or a celebration, but it can also be expensive, and that's why I'm here. I'm going to show you how to create some beautiful invitations for just a fraction of the price that you would pay if you were to get them made professionally. So if that's something that you might be interested in, just keep watching. Okay, so the first step in creating your own invitations is coming up with a design. Now, you can definitely create your own design from scratch using something such as Canva, or you can do what I did and you can download a template. So we are going to head up here to etsy.com. And in the search bar up here, we are going to search for wedding invitation templates. As you can see, there are so many to choose from. You can narrow your search depending on the aesthetic that you're going for. If you're going for a rustic theme, you could search rustic wedding invitations. If you wanted birthday invitations, you could look up birthday invitation templates. But obviously for demonstration purposes today, I have gone with wedding invitation templates. Have a scroll through, find something you like, something that suits your style. Once you've found it, go into the listing. This is the exact one that I purchased. And in the description, it'll give you all the details on how you go about downloading the template and editing the template. I found this one super duper easy. It has really clear instructions, and this one actually comes with a demonstration link. So if we just copy and paste that, you can actually go in and have a look at the template before you purchase it. So you can decide whether you actually like it or not. You can have a play around with fonts. Now, as I said, this is the exact template that I used. So when you go into the demonstration version, obviously it will have this demo waterprint across it because you haven't purchased it. But once you purchase it, obviously that will go away. But in this demonstration, you can just have a play around with the fonts, have a play around with your details, and then you can decide whether or not you like it. And then if you do, you can go back into your Etsy account and click Buy It Now. Once you've done that, we're going to go over to Vistaprint. Once you're in the Vistaprint website, we are going to go up here to invitations and stationery. We're going to wedding invitations. It doesn't really matter what invitation you go to, because we are uploading our own design from scratch. So we're not going to be looking at any of the other Vistaprint designs. Now we're going to go ahead and choose the size. That's another thing you will want to have a look at on the template, is what size your template is suited to. You're then going to go into here and import your template that you've just finished editing and have saved. That will then be imported into here. You can then go next, complete your order, and order your invitations. Super easy. Once you've ordered, it probably will take a few days to a week for your invitations to arrive in the mail, depending on which shipping type you purchased. But once you've done that, you are ready to go. So let's get into the next step. Next, we want to create our name tags. Now, you could skip this step, but I think it gives a nice effect to have your invitations personalized. I created this on Canva. This is just one sheet, but you could use any program of choice to create something similar to this. I just printed this out on my printer at home. This is not something you would have to order from Vistaprint or something like that. You can just print these out from home on your normal printer. Once you've done that and have received your invitations in the mail, you are ready to start putting everything together. Okay, to get started, what we're going to need is a few things. So let me just take you through the exact tools and products that I use to create my invitations. You are more than welcome to change these up depending on your style and depending on what you have access to. First of all, you're going to want some cardstock. I purchased this from Kmart. You can purchase it in the color of your choice. I am going for a rustic type invitation, so I've gone for this brown color, but you can of course use the cardstock that is relevant to your style and your color scheme. We're then going to want all the little bits and pieces of our invitation that we have just created. So I've got my invitation, my reception card, my RSVP card, and our wishing well card. Now you can use whatever is relevant to you. I know not everyone has a wishing well, or you may not want to include a reception card. That is totally fine. Again, tailor this to suit your needs. You're then going to need some magnetic strips. I recommend using ones that you glue on yourself. I did try this with the magnetic tape that you use just like sticky tape and it's self-adhesive, but it was a failure. Everyone's invitations were falling off their fridge. So for my second batch of invitations, I used these magnetic strips that I glue on myself, and it worked perfectly. I didn't have anyone complaining that their invitations were falling off their fridge. So I definitely recommend getting some magnetic strips that you can glue on yourself. I'm actually using our leftover save the date cards that were magnetic, and I'm just cutting them up into strips. So you can use magnets that you've got at home. You can buy this in strips from craft stores, but I'm recycling these leftover save the date cards and cutting them into strips and gluing them on the back of my invitation. Next, you are going to want a glue stick, a hole punch, some scissors, of course, and a pencil. Preferably a lead pencil that can be rubbed out in case you make any mistakes or if any gets on your invitations. You'll see what I mean later. You'll also need some string. Any type of string is perfectly fine. I'm using this jute string because it matches my rustic theme perfectly. I purchased this from Spotlight in Australia, but you should be able to get something like this from any craft store. And again, you can use the color of your choice. It does not have to be this jute colored string. And that is pretty much everything we need to get started. So first of all, we are just going to move all of these to the side, and you will want to take your invitation. Now, this step will depend on how big your invitations are. As you can tell, mine are quite big. So I'm going to be using one sheet of cardstock per invitation. So you can alter that. You may be able, if your invitations are smaller, you may be able to get away with only using half a sheet per invitation. But because mine are quite large, I'm going to need to use the whole sheet per invitation, which is fine, but you just have to make sure that you're purchasing enough cardstock for your invitations. Now, the first step in creating our invitations is to create our template. This is one that I've already made up, and this is the one that I use to create my invitations, but I'm going to show you exactly how I went about creating this template. So the first step in creating our template is to take our invitation. Now, for this template, I do recommend placing your invitation in the middle of the paper. And this is simply because you want to make sure that you have left enough space around the outside to complete your template. After this, we can do some paper saving movements, I guess, around the paper to try and save as much paper as possible. But for this first one, I do recommend just placing it in the middle of your sheet of cardstock so we've got enough room to play with on the outside. Okay, so the first step is we're going to take our pencil and trace around the outside. I'll try and do this dark enough that you guys can see it. And you'll see that this is the reason why I mentioned earlier to use a lead pencil, and that is so you can rub it out if you need to, in case you do get any on your invitation. Okay. Once you have gone around the outside of your invitation, we're now going to work on creating this corner section, which will allow us to fold it over and create a nice little pocket there to slip our invitation into. I do recommend using a ruler for this, but I don't have a ruler. I've just looked everywhere and I do not have a ruler. So take something with a straight edge. I'm just going to use this leftover piece of magnet, and we are going to create our corner section. So the first step is to first of all decide how big you want your corner pocket to be. I don't recommend, look, unless if you're doing it like I'm doing it and I'm doing a pocket on each side, they don't need to be huge because the pockets will hold your invitation perfectly in place. If you just wanted to do one pocket, you can obviously make it a bit bigger so that this is more stable and your invitation is held in place. But as I said, I'm doing 2 pockets, so I'm just going to make them fairly small, just to nicely cap the corners there and hold everything in place. So taking something straight edged, as I said, I do not have a ruler, so we are just absolutely winging it here. We're going to create a straight line there, and then ruling across, lining up with the base of our invitation, just like so. And we're then creating the piece that will fold around and then glue onto the back to secure our pocket. So we are going to rule a straight line down here, lining up with the side edge of our invitation. And then we want to try and get it as close as we can to the same size as this triangle here. We can alter it later on with the scissors once we cut it out if it is not perfect, so don't stress too much, but we just want to try and get it as close to that size as we can. Oops. I remember, whoops, sorry. That's a bit rough, but remember, this is just your template, so it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. It's literally just so we can cut it out and we know what shape we need to do for the rest of our invitations. Okay, once you've done that corner, we now are going to move on to the second corner and doing that exact same thing as what we just did. Again, trying to get it as close to that first side or that first corner as we can, but as I said, we can fix this up once we cut it out, so don't stress too much. Okay, that is your template complete. As I said before, if you did want to do just one triangle pouch at the bottom, that is totally fine. That would also work really well, but you would obviously need to alter the size of your template here to cater to your bigger corner pocket. Once you've completed your template, we are going to go ahead and cut it out. Okay, so once you've finished cutting out your template, this is what you should be left with. Now what we're going to do is just fold along these lines here just to make sure that it is all lining up how we want it to. And my biggest tip here would be to make sure that the corner of this triangle here lines up perfectly with your bottom edge. So when you fold it over, that point there should be perfectly along the bottom edge. And then we are going to fold it over, and that will be where we secure our corner pouch, but do not secure anything for this one because obviously this is our template and we need to have it
so we can trace around it for the rest of our invitations. But at the moment, I'm just making sure that we have cut the sizing correctly and that it is all ready to go. All right, so this is what you should be left with. I haven't glued anything down. Again, this is just our template. I even recommend going in and putting a T on it so you know that this is your template. Do not stick your corners down because otherwise you're going to have to go ahead and create a whole new template, and we want to try and save time, so that is not ideal. Now, take your invitation, slip it in to your pockets, and just see if you're happy with how these corners look. I think they look really good. I'm very happy with how these have turned out, so I'm going to leave my template like this. But if you wanted to make your corners bigger or smaller, or you wanted to change corners because you prefer it to be on, you know, the opposite sides, that is totally fine. You can go ahead and create another template, have a play around with it. In saying that, I don't recommend using your expensive cardstock to create your template. I wouldn't recommend using a thin piece of normal printer paper because it's not going to be easy enough for you to trace around. You do need something that is quite sturdy, and because this is your template and you're going to be using it over and over again, you want it to last. You don't want it to rip or, you know, be damaged, because then you're just going to have to create another one. So I do recommend using some kind of cardboard to create your template, but you do not have to use your expensive cardstock or the cardstock that you're using to create your invitations, because I understand we want to save money. Once your template is complete, we can now begin. You are now going to take another fresh piece of cardstock, and this is what I said before about saving paper, okay? Because we are going to use these cut-offs to complete another section of our invitation, so do not throw your cut-offs away. Once your template's ready to go, you can line it up on your paper, trying to save as much paper as possible, because as I said, we are going to use these cut-offs. Whoops, I've got two pieces there. We're then taking our template and we are simply going to trace around it. Once you've traced around your template, you can move your template to the side. We're then going to go ahead and cut out what we have just traced. Okay, moving all our cut-offs to the side. Again, don't throw them out because we do need them for later. So once you have cut out your tracing of your template, you can now just go around the edges and remove any of that pencil that may be left behind. Don't worry too much about the triangles here because they will be covered once we fold them in and secure them. It's more just the edges of your cardstock. Okay, now what we're going to do is what we just did with the template and fold our pockets in. Again, lining up this point with our bottom edge. Turning it over if you need to fold that down behind. Just like that. Now you'll see here that this edge kind of hangs over a little bit. Don't stress, that is totally fine. We'll just trim that off with the scissors once we've secured our corner pockets. So now we're flipping over, taking our glue stick, and we are going to secure those corners. Make sure you are gluing the back of your invitation, not the front. Because if you glued this side down, obviously you're not going to be able to insert your invitation into that little pocket. Again, for the second one, pushing that down, making sure it's secured. Now, when I was making my invitations, once I had finished with a pocket, I would move it to the side and sit something heavy on both corners just to make sure that it was down nice and secure, and then I would move on and make the next one. But because I'm only making one today with you guys for demonstration purposes, I'm not going to do that. But if you are making a big batch, I do recommend placing something heavy on the corners just so you can make sure that that is nice and stuck down before you go popping your invitations into it, because you don't want it to fall apart. All right, so now that we've finished that part, we're now just gonna go in and trim that extra section there. I'm not sure if you can see. There's a little bit of overhang there, so we're just gonna go ahead and trim that off, making sure you do not cut that edge there of your pocket, because that's gonna defeat the purpose and that pocket is just gonna fall off. So now that that's looking good, we can take our magnetic strips, turn this over, and we are going to glue them onto the back of our pocket. Making sure you've got a good decent amount of glue on there. You don't want it to fall off like our first batch of invitations did, but again, we didn't use this technique for our first batch. I used the self-adhesive magnetic tape and it was a failure. So again, I definitely recommend using magnetic strips that you stick on yourself and are not self-adhesive. Okay, once that's done, flip it back over. We can now take all the bits and pieces of our invitation and you're going to basically place them in the order that you want them to be in your pocket. So on top, I want to be my invitation. Then I'm going to do my reception card. Then we've got our RSVP card, and then we've got our wishing well card. Making sure they are pushed all into the corner because we want everything to be sitting in this corner pocket here. Okay, so I've pushed it all together like that. And now flipping them over and popping them into that corner. And then gently bending so that one goes into the other corner. And that is that part complete. Now what we're going to do is take our name tags that we printed off earlier. I've got one here for demonstration purposes. We are then going to take our cutoffs. Remember how I said don't throw out your cutoffs? And we are going to cut out circles or whichever shape that you like. You can do your name tags in any shape that you prefer. You may prefer to do square, you may prefer to do oval. Whatever shape you decide, we're going to cut out a shape that is slightly bigger than this one because we want to be able to stick this name tag onto our cardstock, and you want to have a nice border around the outside. So I've already prepared a cardstock circle. I used a large hole punch to punch out these circles from my cutoffs. I don't have that hole punch with me at the moment to show you guys, but I will insert a photo here so you guys can see what I'm talking about. It's basically a hole punch, but a huge hole punch. So instead of doing little tiny holes like that, it does big holes like that, and that's where I got these from. The reason I don't have it here with me is because it's my mum's and it's at her house, and I borrowed it off her when I was doing my invitations. So I can't show you that, but I will insert a photo. That's what we use our cutoffs for. So rather than wasting more cardstock, we're going to use our cutoffs to create our circles or squares or whatever shape you're doing to stick our name tags onto. So once you've created your cardstock circles or shapes, I should say, we're then going to go in and cut out our name tags. I did all mine by hand. If you've got a hole punch or something that would make this easier for you, by all means do that, but I don't have any other tools. I've just got scissors, so I am going to go in and cut them all out by hand. As perfectly as you can. Okay, once you've cut that out, we're going to just glue that name tag onto our cardstock. Once you've done that, take your hole punch. We're going to punch a hole into the top of it there. And move that to the side for now. We are now going to take our string and we're going to figure out how much string we need to tie around our invitation and then tie into a bow. So kind of like what we did before with the template for the cardstock, we're now kind of creating a template for our strings. So before you cut any off, because again, we want to save money, we don't want to waste any of this. So before you cut it off, just unravel a bit of length there. And we're then going to wrap our string around our invitation and just do a mock-up, I guess, of how you think you might tie it. I personally am going to tie it in bows. So I'm just going to go in and do a rough bow just to see how much string it is going to take. That looks pretty good. So I'm then just going to cut my string because I'm happy with how that looks and that length. Then we can undo this. And we can now use this piece of string as a template for when we are cutting the other pieces of string, because you don't want to have to do that measuring process every time you do an invitation. That is so time consuming. You want to try and save as much time as possible because chances are you've got other things you need to do. Planning a wedding is hectic. So we want to try and save time. So use this piece of string as a template for when you're cutting the other pieces of string for your invitations. Okay, so now we are going to add the finishing touches. So as we just did, we're just going to imitate exactly what we just did, only this time we are going to add our name tag. Tie your bow. Now remembering, don't do it too tight because you don't want it to damage the sides of your invitation. If it's too tight, it's going to be compressing here and it's going to either be damaged or it's not going to be sitting flat. So we want to make sure that this isn't too tight, but make sure it's secure enough that it's not just going to fall off, if that makes sense. So that is pretty much a finished product. How easy was that? If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe and turn on those notifications so you are notified of my future videos. If you'd like to see more wedding DIY videos, please comment down below. I would love to hear your suggestions or any other suggestions you may have. But in the meantime, I will see you next time. Thanks for watching, guys. See ya.